Welcome to the Eclipse Horror Stories. Before diving into the stories, please like and subscribe and be the part of this community. I used to work the night shift at a small radio station in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Most nights were quiet, just me, the microphone, and a playlist of old rock classics. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. At least until that night in November when everything started to unravel. It was a little after 1 a.m. when the interference began. A low hum bled into the speakers, steady and unnatural, like something alive had wormed its way into the broadcast. I tried to adjust the dials, thinking it was just static from a storm, but the weather outside was calm. Clear skies. No wind. Then came the voice. It was faint at first, like a whisper underwater. The words were garbled, but there was no mistaking that it was a human voice. I leaned closer to the monitor, adjusting the frequency until the sound sharpened. "Help us." That's all it said. Over and over again, a man's voice, hoarse and cracking, like he hadn't had water in days. I froze. We didn't have any live calls scheduled for that hour, and the phone lines hadn't rung. This wasn't coming through the station, it was bleeding into our frequency from somewhere else. I should have cut the feed, but curiosity got the better of me. I turned up the volume. The voice grew louder. The words became clearer. "They're under the ground. They're in the dark. Don't let them out." A jolt of cold ran through me. His tone wasn't pleading anymore, it was urgent, frantic, like he knew I was the only one who could hear him. "They're digging. They're coming up. Allentown will drown in blood." I ripped my headphones off. My pulse hammered in my chest as I stared at the silent soundboard, its green lights blinking steadily as though nothing was wrong. I told myself it was a prank. Some bored amateur radio operator messing with frequencies. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a prank. The voice was too raw, too broken. I tried to call the police station, but the line was dead. Not static. Dead. When I picked up, there wasn't even a dial tone. Then the lights flickered. Just once, but enough to make me look up at the ceiling, expecting the power to cut. That's when I saw it, on the far wall, behind the glass of the recording booth. A shadow. At first, I thought it was mine. But then it moved, separate from me. Its limbs were too long, too thin, dragging along the walls like smoke caught in a draft. The voice on the frequency screamed. "Get out!" The glass shattered inward, sprang across the floor. I ducked, shielding my face. When I looked up, the shadow was gone. The booth was empty. But the radio was still on. And the voice wasn't just in my headphones anymore, it was coming through the speakers. "Allentown is cursed. They never stopped digging." I grabbed my bag and ran, leaving the station unlocked behind me. As I burst out into the night, I realized the street outside was empty. Not quiet, empty. No cars, no footsteps, not even the sound of wind. And faintly, beneath it all, I heard it again. The hum. Deep, steady, rising from beneath the ground. I told myself I wouldn't go back. But I did. And that was my first mistake. When I finally made it home, I locked the doors, closed the blinds, and sat in the dark for nearly an hour, trying to convince myself that I hadn't just lost my mind. Maybe I dozed off at the station and dreamed it all. Maybe the voice on the radio was just interference from some ham operator. Maybe the shadow was a trick of the light. But no matter how many times I replayed it in my head, the sound of that man's scream kept echoing. I couldn't sleep. By dawn, exhaustion dragged me into a restless haze, but the sound woke me again. Not from the radio this time, from outside my window. It was faint, like a vibration in the earth. A low, rhythmic thud-thud-thud, as though someone was driving a pickaxe into stone deep below the city. I pressed my ear to the floor. The sound was clearer there. Not just one set of strikes, but many. Dozens. Maybe hundreds. Digging. Allentown has a history. An old town built on old bones. I remembered reading something once about the underground tunnels, remnants of the coal mining era, abandoned shafts running beneath the streets. Most people forgot about them. Some said they collapsed years ago. But as I listened to the steady strikes, I realized they were closer than that. Not collapsed. Not forgotten. Still active. By mid-afternoon, I convinced myself to get out. I needed fresh air, some noise, some normalcy. I walked into town, but what I found wasn't normal. The streets weren't busy like usual. Shops were open, but fewer people milled about. Those who did walked fast, heads low, like they didn't want to be noticed. At the corner diner, I overheard two old men talking in hushed tones. "They've been hearing it again," one said, stirring his coffee with a trembling hand. "The digging." The other nodded. "Same as before." Before what? I wanted to ask, but I couldn't bring myself to interrupt. Their faces were pale, drawn tight with something deeper than fear. It was resignation. Like this wasn't the first time. I left quickly. By evening, the sound in the ground grew louder. My apartment walls vibrated, dust trickling from the ceiling as though the whole building were trembling. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the edge of town, where the old mine entrances used to be. The woods there had grown thick over the years, swallowing the ruins of what once was. But I found one, a jagged opening half covered by fallen boards, the faint scent of rot and wet stone drifting out. And the sound, oh God, the sound, it was deafening here. Pickaxes clanging, shovels scraping, dirt shifting. Then a voice. Not from inside the mine, but behind me. "You shouldn't be here." I turned fast, my flashlight beam catching a man in a thick coat, his face shadowed by the brim of a hat. His skin was gray, like he hadn't seen sunlight in years. His eyes were wide, sunken, darting to the hole in the earth as if afraid it would open wider. "They'll hear you," he whispered. "They always hear when someone comes close." I stammered, "Who? Who's down there?" He didn't answer. He just pressed a finger to his lips, trembling, and stepped backward into the trees. Within seconds, he was gone, swallowed by the forest. I stood frozen, staring into the dark mouth of the mine. Then something echoed out, something I couldn't explain. Not digging. Not voices. A laugh. High-pitched. Childlike. Echoing up from the blackness beneath Allentown. That's when I ran. But no matter how far I went, the sound followed. The laughter beneath the ground. And I knew, I wasn't just hearing it anymore. I was being invited. The next morning, I walked downtown, hoping for some proof that I wasn't losing my mind. If others had heard the digging, if others had seen strange things, then maybe I could convince myself I wasn't cursed. But the streets were emptier than the day before. Allentown isn't a huge city, but it isn't supposed to feel abandoned either. On a weekday morning, the sidewalks should have been filled with people heading to work, kids running to catch buses, shop doors jingling open. Instead, everything felt off. I counted, without meaning to. One woman hurrying with her head down. A man sweeping his storefront, though his broom never touched the ground. An elderly couple crossing the street slowly, clinging to each other like they were lost. That was it. Where were the others? I ducked into the diner again. The same one from yesterday. It was worse inside. Only 2 booths were occupied. The cook was there, but he didn't look up when I came in. His hands moved mechanically, flipping eggs, pouring coffee, but his eyes were empty. At the booth by the window sat a girl, maybe 17. Her hands trembled around her cup. I slid into the seat across from her before I could second-guess myself. "Have you noticed it too?" I asked quietly. She stared at me, her pupils wide, skin pale. "They're gone," she whispered. "All of them." "Who's gone?" "My parents. My brother. When I woke up this morning, their beds were empty. But the sheets were warm." I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that they'd left early, but I couldn't. I believed her. A sound drifted in from outside, a faint scrape, scrape, scrape. Everyone in the diner froze. The cook dropped his spatula. The girl's hands clutched the table. It was the sound of shovels. But not from underground this time. From outside, right on the street. I rushed to the window. The sidewalk was empty. But the sound persisted, louder now, closer, until the glass rattled in its frame. Then it stopped. When I turned back, the girl was gone. Not gone like she'd run out the door. Gone like she'd never been there. Her cup still steamed on the table, but the seat across from me was empty. I stumbled out of the diner, heart pounding. The streets outside were deserted. One by one, the people of Allentown were vanishing. Not dying. Not running. Just slipping away. I heard the laugh again, the same high, childlike giggle I'd heard in the mines. But this time, it came from the alley to my left. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. A little boy stood there, no older than 8. His skin was pale, almost gray. Dirt was caked under his fingernails, and his eyes were solid black, like 2 holes drilled into his skull. He grinned at me, showing teeth far too sharp for a child. "You're next," he said in a sing-song voice. I blinked, and he was gone. But when I looked down, I saw it, the fresh trail of soil smeared across the pavement, leading back toward the forest. Back toward the mines. That night, I barricaded my door with everything I could find, chairs, shelves, even my mattress. But it didn't matter. The digging came louder, shaking my walls, making the floorboards creak. And sometime near dawn, I realized I was no longer alone in my apartment. I didn't hear the door open. I didn't see anyone walk in. But from the corner of the room came that same voice, small and sharp. "Next." The last thing I saw before the lights went out was a shadow crawling across the ceiling, smiling with too many teeth. I don't remember falling asleep. Maybe I blacked out. Maybe the thing on the ceiling took something from me, time, memory, maybe even a piece of myself. All I know is when I woke, daylight was streaming through the blinds, and the barricade I'd built the night before was gone. Not broken. Not shoved aside. Gone. The furniture I had stacked against the door wasn't in my apartment anymore. My first thought was that I had dreamed it all. The voice, the child in the alley, the vanishing people, just the spirals of a sleep-deprived mind. But when I went outside, I knew I hadn't. Because they were back. The streets were full again. Cars rolled past. Kids laughed on the sidewalks. The diner bustled with its usual morning crowd. Except, something was off. I watched a group of men unloading crates from a truck. Their faces were blank, movements stiff, synchronized like a drill team. Across the street, a woman pushed a stroller. I looked down into the carriage as she passed and froze. The baby wasn't moving. Its eyes were open, black, staring right through me. No one else seemed to notice. Inside the diner, I scanned the booths. That girl from yesterday, the one who said her family was gone, sat alone in the corner. Relief surged through me, and I hurried over. "You're okay," I said, sliding into the booth. She looked at me slowly, her head tilting like she didn't quite recognize me. Her skin was waxy, her lips pale. "My parents are back," she whispered. That's good, right?" She smiled then, but it wasn't joy. It was wrong. Her lips stretched too far, her teeth too sharp. "They don't sleep anymore," she said. "They just dig." Her fingernails scraped the table, leaving deep gouges in the wood. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a chair. No one else looked up. No one cared that a girl was carving through solid oak with her bare hands. When I fled outside, I realized the truth. The people of Allentown hadn't returned. Not really. Something else was worrying them. That night, I heard the digging again, closer than ever. I pressed my ear to the floor, and the sound wasn't just beneath me, it was inside the walls. Scraping, clawing, tumbling. At 3 a.m., the knocking started. 3 raps against the door. Steady. Patient. I stayed quiet, crouched in the dark. Then a voice, my mother's voice, spoke through the door. "Sweetheart, let us in." My chest went cold. My mother had been dead for 5 years. The knocking grew louder. More voices joined hers. Familiar voices. Friends. Neighbors. Even the girl from the diner. "Let us in. Come with us. Join the digging." The doorknob rattled. The walls shook. And then, silence. I sat in the dark, too afraid to move. Hours passed. When dawn finally came, I gathered enough courage to step outside. The streets were full again. Busier than before. But every face I saw turned toward me at once, eyes wide, black, unblinking. And then, as if in one voice, they all smiled. By the 5th night, I knew I couldn't stay above ground anymore. The digging was everywhere, in the floors, in the walls, in my bones. It wasn't just a sound now. It was a pulse, something that crawled under my skin and whispered in my skull. "Come down." That's what it wanted. That's what they all wanted. I packed a flashlight, a crowbar, and my recorder from the radio station. Some part of me still believed that if I documented this, if I could get proof, I could warn someone outside Allentown. Maybe someone would believe me. Maybe someone would come. The forest was thick, the air heavy with rot as I made my way back to the mine entrance I'd found before. In the daylight, it didn't look so menacing, just a hole in the earth, boarded up long ago. But as the sun dipped behind the trees, the shadows stretched long and black across the ground, pulling me toward it. The boards weren't nailed in tight. They came off with 3 strikes of the crowbar. The air that poured out was cold, wet, metallic. Like blood soaked into stone. I switched on the flashlight and stepped inside. The tunnel was narrow, walls glistening with damp. My footsteps echoed too loud, as though the mine itself was mocking me. And beneath that echo, steady and relentless, came the sound of shovels. Thud. Scrape. Thud. Scrape. The deeper I went, the clearer it became that this wasn't an abandoned mine. Fresh soil lined the floor. Wooden beams were splintered, shoved aside. Something, or someone, was making new passages. Half a mile in, I found the first mark. A handprint. Not painted. Not carved. Pressed deep into the stone wall, the fingers impossibly long, the nails dragging trails of gouged rock. My flashlight flickered. I stopped, pressing my back to the wall, recorder clutched tight. My voice shook. This is real. There's something down here. That's when I heard it, the laughter again. Childlike, echoing from every direction. I spun, light darting across the tunnel. Empty. Then a face appeared. Just for a second. A boy's face, pale and dirty, pressed into the stone wall as though the earth itself had swallowed him. His black eyes blinked once before melting back into the rock. I stumbled backward, nearly dropping the flashlight. The tunnel sloped downward now, deeper and deeper into the earth. The air grew thicker, harder to breathe, and the digging grew louder until it wasn't just sound anymore, it was vibration, shaking my chest, rattling my teeth. At the bottom, the tunnel opened into a cavern. That's where I saw them. Dozens of people. Maybe hundreds. All of them from Allentown. Men, women, children. They stood in rows, their eyes black, their faces slack, shovels and pickaxes in their hands. Each swing was synchronized, carving deeper into the rock, exposing something vast and pulsing beneath. I couldn't look away. It wasn't stone they were digging into. It was flesh. A massive wall of dark, leathery skin stretched across the cavern, veins glowing faintly red beneath the surface. And it was breathing. Every strike of their shovels tore it open wider, and from those wounds, thick black liquid oozed onto the cavern floor, steaming as it pooled. One of the diggers turned, as if sensing me. It was the girl from the diner. Her face was pale, her smile stretched too wide, her teeth sharp. She raised her shovel and pointed at me. The entire cavern stopped digging. Hundreds of black eyes turned in unison, staring straight at me. And then they began to laugh. The sound of hundreds laughing in perfect unison was worse than the digging. It wasn't joy. It wasn't even madness. It was worship. My flashlight trembled in my hand, its beam darting across the cavern, catching glimpses of pale faces and black eyes. Every one of them was smiling. Every one of them was watching me. Then the ground shifted. Not from their shovels. From below. The massive wall of flesh they'd been hacking into shuddered like it was waking from a long sleep. The veins pulsed brighter, glowing red, and the cavern filled with a low hum that rattled my chest and made my vision blur. I stumbled backward, clutching my recorder like it was a crucifix. This is real, I whispered into it. Something's alive under Allentown. Something they've been feeding. The girl from the diner stepped forward. Dirt streaked her pale cheeks, her black eyes shining with devotion. You hear it, don't you? She said, her voice soft, almost tender. It's calling you too. I don't want this, I snapped, though my voice cracked. Her grin widened. It doesn't matter what you want. Once you've heard the signal, you belong to it. Behind her, the others resumed digging. Their picks and shovels struck the flesh in a sickening rhythm. Each blow made the thing beneath the earth twitch, made the red veins flare brighter, made the hum deepen. The cavern walls dripped with condensation. No, that wasn't water. It was blood, running in thin streams down the rock, seeping into the soil. Then the first eye opened. It was enormous, buried beneath layers of stone and flesh, but as they dug, the lid peeled back. The eye was bloodshot, the iris black as coal, the pupil so wide it seemed endless. And it was looking at me. I staggered back, choking on the damp air. My flashlight flickered again, then died. The cavern plunged into darkness except for the faint red glow pulsing beneath the skin of the thing in the rock. I tried to run. I made it 3 steps before hands grabbed me, cold, clammy, dozens of them clutching my arms, my legs, my throat. They held me in place as the cavern shook again. The hum became words. Not in English, not in any human tongue, but I understood them in my bones. Wake, feed, rise. The girl leaned close, her whisper hot against my ear. It's been buried for centuries. The miners thought they found coal. But they found it instead. And we've been helping it ever since. Her black eyes sparkled. We're almost done. The earth split with a deafening crack. Chunks of rock rained down, dust filling the cavern. The people didn't flinch. They laughed harder, their voices merging with the hum until it was all one terrible chorus. I wrenched free and ran, stumbling through the tunnels, the sound of laughter chasing me. The ground shook so violently I thought the ceiling would collapse. But it didn't collapse. It opened. As I reached the mouth of the mine, I heard it rise. A sound like mountains grinding against each other, like the earth itself tearing open. A massive, wet breath sucked the air from my lungs, and the trees above bent as though bowing to something crawling toward the surface. I burst into the forest, gasping, dirt and blood on my clothes. Behind me, the mine roared like a beast being born. And somewhere in that roar was the voice from the radio. They're coming up. Allentown will drown in blood. I finally understood. It wasn't a warning. It was a prophecy. And it had just begun. I ran straight from the forest back to the radio station. My lungs burned, my legs shook, but the fear drove me faster than I'd ever moved in my life. If I could just get on air, if I could tell the truth, maybe, just maybe, someone outside Allentown would hear. The building looked the same as always, squat and dull against the empty street. But when I pushed through the door, the silence was suffocating. No hum of equipment, no flicker of fluorescent lights. The power was dead. I slammed the door shut behind me, heart hammering, and made my way to the soundboard. To my surprise, the emergency generator kicked in as soon as I touched the controls. The panel lit up, the red on-air sign flickered to life, and the microphone glowed faintly. For a second, I hesitated. What if no one believed me? What if this was already too late? Then the ground shook again, harder this time. The sound of splitting earth roared in the distance, closer now, rolling beneath the streets of Allentown. I pressed the button. This is WQAL broadcasting from Allentown, I said, my voice breaking. If you can hear me, please, listen. This city is lost. There's something under us. Something alive. They've been digging it out, feeding it. It's awake now, and it won't stop here. My voice echoed back through the headphones, tinny and terrified. I kept going. If you have family here, leave them. They're not your family anymore. Their bodies walk, but they aren't inside. I've seen it. They belong to it now. To whatever is rising beneath the ground. The station lights flickered. The hum surged through the speakers, drowning out my words. I shouted over it. This isn't a story. This isn't a prank. Allentown will drown in blood, and then the rest of you will follow if you don't. The sound cut me off. Laughter. That same childlike giggle, pouring through the speakers, deafening. The meters spiked red, the glass on the booth rattled, and I ripped off the headphones. But the laughter didn't stop. It was outside now. I turned and saw them, pressing their faces to the studio glass. Dozens of them. The girl from the diner. The boy from the alley. Neighbors, strangers, people I'd grown up with. Their eyes were black voids, their smiles too wide. Blood dripped from their mouths as they pressed their hands against the glass, leaving streaks of red. One by one, they began to speak in perfect unison. Join us. Join the digging. Join the rising. The floor split open beneath the booth. I stumbled back, the soundboard crashing into the pit as a gust of air howled upward, hot, fetid, reeking of earth and blood. And from that pit, I saw it. Not all of it. Not even most. Just a fraction. A claw the size of a telephone pole, slick with black ichor, reaching up toward the surface. The glass shattered inward, and the crowd poured through, crawling, laughing, chanting. I had one choice left. I grabbed the recorder, the same one I'd carried into the mines, and pressed it against the microphone. My last words bled out through static and screams. If you're hearing this, run. Don't come here. Don't dig. Don't listen. The claw slammed down, the roof split apart, and the world went white. They say radio signals can travel far. Sometimes they bounce, carry, echo in places they were never meant to reach. So if you're hearing this broadcast now, wherever you are, you know the truth. Allentown is gone. And soon, you will be too.